Rowan Walker hadn't meant to make a scene in the grocery store, but when your 5-year-old is screaming over a 60-cent pack of gummy worms and you don't have 60 cents, things tend to spiral. Dad, please. I'll clean my room forever. Little Zeke wailed, his curly hair bouncing as he clutched the candy like it held the key to his happiness. Rowan crouched down, rubbing the back of his neck. Buddy, we need milk more than candy right now, okay? Zeke's bottom lip quivered. Rowan's heart cracked a little more. It was supposed to be a quick run: bread, milk, eggs. The essentials. But even essentials were starting to feel like luxuries these days. Construction jobs were drying up, and the only work Rowan could find lately was patchy freelance stuff fixing fences, painting garages, even cleaning gutters. Nothing lasted. I'm sorry, Rowan whispered, taking the gummy worms out of Zeke's hand. Next time. A woman's voice behind him spoke softly. I think he's earned the candy. Rowan turned, ready to politely decline whatever pity was about to be handed down, but the sight of her made him freeze. She looked like she didn't belong there. Not in this dusty aisle with its flickering lights and dented soup cans. She had sleek dark hair pinned up messily, oversized sunglasses perched on her head, and a green silk blouse tucked into high-waisted jeans that somehow didn't look casual at all. Her heels clicked against the linoleum like she just stepped out of a black car and not a beat-up sedan. She smiled, holding out a $5 bill. Please, let me, he's adorable. Rowan straightened up, feeling heat crawl up the back of his neck. That's kind, but we're good. Zeke, of course, betrayed him instantly. Please, Daddy, she said I earned it, the woman laughed, crouching to Zeke's level. What's your name, sweetheart? Zeke, he beamed. I'm 5 and I can almost count to 100. Almost, she teased. That's impressive. Rowan hesitated. Really, I don't want charity. It's not charity, she said, standing. It's candy. And before Rowan could stop her, she added the candy to her own items at checkout. She didn't just buy the gummy worms, she bought the milk too. Rowan tried to protest again, but she handed him the bag with a quick, "You'll make my day if you just say thank you," he blinked. Thank you, see, day made. She smiled, then turned back toward the exit, heels clicking. Rowan stood frozen until Zeke tugged his sleeve. She was like a princess. She was, Rowan said slowly, watching her walk away. The next morning, Rowan was at the local park with Zeke sipping coffee that was more sugar than caffeine. Zeke was on the jungle gym when Rowan noticed her again, sunglasses on, hair up, talking on the phone with a little girl beside her. The girl looked about the same age as Zeke, with 2 neat braids and a sparkly backpack. The woman hung up, looking frazzled. She glanced around, then spotted Rowan. Recognition flickered in her eyes. Hey, she said, walking over. You were at the store yesterday. Right, thanks again, I owe you, she waved it off. Don't worry about it, I'm actually in a tight spot and this is going to sound insane. But is there any chance you'd be willing to watch my daughter for a few hours? Rowan raised a brow. I'm sorry, I know, it's crazy. But I had a sitter lined up, she bailed last second. I've got a meeting downtown I can't reschedule, and I saw you with your son and… I don't know, you seemed like a good dad. Rowan hesitated. You want me to babysit? Just for 3 hours. I'll pay you, please. Her name's Zara. She's quiet, loves puzzles, won't eat anything green. I'll leave you my number, her allergies, everything. He glanced at Zeke, who was already waving at Zara. What's your name? She paused. Zara Rivers, he nodded slowly. All right, Zara, 3 hours, she exhaled in relief. Thank you. Seriously. Rowan watched her walk away in her sharp blazer, phone already back to her ear, disappearing into a black Cadillac that pulled up a moment later. He turned to the kids. Well, looks like we've got company. Zara didn't say much at first, but she and Zeke clicked instantly. They built a sandcastle for an hour, then chased bubbles Rowan blew from a small tube he always carried in his pocket. By lunchtime, Rowan had bought them hot dogs from a street vendor and was watching them giggle under a tree, mustard on their cheeks. When Zara returned, she looked tense. Until she saw them. You're a magician, she breathed. They're both smiling. They're good kids. She crouched beside Zara. Did you have fun? Zara nodded. We made up a game. Zeke said his dad is the best jungle gym spotter in the universe. Zara laughed, then looked up at Rowan. Thank you, really. He shrugged, brushing his hands on his jeans. No problem, she hesitated. Can I treat you guys to dinner as a thank you? Rowan almost said no, but then Zeke shouted, can we get pizza? Zara looked at him, smiling. Pizza, Rowan gave in. All right. But I'm paying for mine. You're not, she said lightly. Non-negotiable. The pizza place she brought them to wasn't a regular pizza joint. It had waiters in crisp uniforms and candles on the tables. Zeke's eyes widened when they brought out a personal cheese pizza on a silver tray. Rowan leaned over. You sure this place is okay for kids? Zara grinned. I own it, he blinked. You what? I didn't lie, I just didn't explain. He stared. You run a pizza place. I own a few restaurants and a couple of hotels. Rowan leaned back, stunned. You're a millionaire, she nodded without arrogance. I am. He let out a slow breath, gripping his glass of water. That's not what I expected. Zara tilted her head. Is it a problem? No, he said honestly. Just unexpected. She looked down at her plate, then back at him. I meant it when I said you seemed like a great dad. Rowan met her eyes. And I meant it when I said you were like a princess. She smiled, cheeks coloring. Well, maybe I needed a night. Zeke and Zaria were laughing at something across the table, and for a moment, everything felt surreal. Like the world had tilted slightly, and instead of falling, Rowan had landed exactly where he was supposed to. He didn't know it yet, but the night had changed everything. Rowan hadn't planned on seeing Zara again. After that surreal dinner, he'd expected her to disappear back into the world she clearly came from, one filled with white tablecloths, chauffeured cars, and expensive perfume. But 3 days later, she showed up at the job site where he was replacing rotted beams on a family's porch. She stood on the sidewalk in low boots and a blazer, arms crossed, watching him work. He dropped his hammer and climbed down the ladder. You stalking me now? Zara raised an eyebrow. I called your number. It went straight to voicemail. I dropped my phone in a puddle. It's drying on my windowsill. She nodded slowly, then tilted her head. You're good at this. I've done it long enough. You didn't mention you did construction. You didn't mention you had a driver. Her lips curved slightly. Touché. He wiped his hands on his jeans. What brings you here? I wanted to ask you something. She glanced at the house behind him. You have a minute. Rowan stepped away from the porch. All right, ask. There's a property I'm developing on the edge of the city. It's a mess right now, overgrown, half the foundation's cracked. I'm putting together a team to renovate it, and I want you in charge of the build. He stared at her. You don't even know if I'm licensed. I checked. He crossed his arms. You looked me up. I like to be thorough when I'm trusting someone with a multi-million-dollar renovation. Her expression didn't waver. You're fully certified. You've done residential, small commercial, even some historical restoration. You've got a good reputation and a clean record. And you still want me. I want someone who gives a damn about what they're doing. You strike me as that kind of man. Rowan's jaw flexed. You don't even know me. Not yet. She held out a folder. The specs are in there. Floor plans, budget, timeline. Look it over. If you're interested, call the number inside. You'll be paid well, very well. He took the folder without opening it. Why me? Because you didn't try to impress me. You didn't flinch when I said I owned that restaurant. And because your kid trusted mine in 10 minutes flat. He glanced at the folder. You always offer jobs to strangers you meet in grocery stores. No, she said, turning toward her car. But maybe I should start. Later that night, Rowan sat at his kitchen table with the folder open in front of him. Zeke was snoring softly on the couch, a superhero cape twisted around his legs. The numbers in the proposal made his head spin. The project would last 6 months. The pay was more than he'd made in the past 2 years combined. He flipped to the last page and saw a note paperclipped to the corner. I meant it. You're the right person for this, Z. He ran a hand through his hair. The whole thing felt too good to be real, but the job was legitimate. Her reputation checked out, and he needed this. The next morning, he called the number. Zara answered with a quiet, I was hoping you'd say yes. He did. 3 days later, they met on the property site. It was a sprawling, neglected estate on a hill, the kind of place that once held grandeur but now sagged under years of weather and abandonment. Ivy choked the walls. The front door had a crack down the center, but the bones were good. Zara walked beside him in work boots and a jacket, holding a coffee in one hand and a tablet in the other. This used to be a boarding house. I'm converting it into a luxury retreat center. Spa, yoga studio, gourmet kitchen, the works. Rowan stepped over a broken banister. You're not doing anything halfway, are you? Never, he glanced at her. Why a retreat center? Her gaze drifted toward the back of the property. My mother used to bring me to a place like this when I was little. She said when life gets too loud, you need somewhere quiet enough to hear yourself think. He studied her. She's still around. No, her voice dropped an octave. She passed last year, cancer. He didn't press. Zara turned toward him. You'll have full autonomy on the project. I trust your judgment. Just keep it within budget and on schedule. What about the permits? Already secured, he exhaled. You don't mess around. I don't have time to. That night, she sent him the construction team roster and a personal message. Let me know what tools or equipment you need. I'll make sure it's on site. The next morning, a flatbed truck arrived with brand new power saws, drills, scaffolding, and even a mobile office trailer. Rowan stood in the gravel driveway, stunned. Everything was top of the line. He was used to borrowing tools, patching cords with electrical tape, and stretching every dollar. Now he had access to more than he'd ever dreamed of working with. By the end of the week, he had a crew assembled and the work began. Zara visited the site every other day, sometimes with Zaria in tow, other times alone. She asked questions, took notes, and once even helped him haul a stack of drywall when they were short a pair of hands. One afternoon, after a long day of tearing out moldy carpet, she sat beside him on the porch steps. You ever think about leaving this city? She asked, watching the sun dip behind the trees. Plenty of times. What stopped you? He glanced toward the truck where Zeke was showing Zaria how to fold paper airplanes. He did, Zara nodded. You're a good father. Rowan didn't say anything for a moment. His mom left when he was 3, said she needed more than I could give her. Took off with a musician and a backpack full of my rent money. Zara looked at him, something unreadable passing through her eyes. She was wrong. He looked down at his hands. Maybe. You ever let anyone help you? He gave a quiet laugh. Not if I can help it. She leaned back on her elbows. Figured. Rowan turned to her. What about you? Anyone in your life? She paused. Not lately. Most men I meet think I'm a challenge to conquer or a wallet to impress. Guess I'm the odd one out. You're the first one who hasn't flinched when I showed up in heels and offered a 5-figure contract. Rowan looked at her, the air thick between them. Do you always test people like this? Only the ones I want to keep around. That night, as he tucked Zeke into bed, Rowan couldn't shake the feeling that something was shifting, not just with the job, with Zara. With the way she looked at him like she saw through the layers he'd built to survive. He didn't know what this was yet, but it wasn't ordinary. And neither was she. By the 3rd month of the renovation, the estate had begun to transform. The cracked foundation had been reinforced, the walls gutted and reframed, and a skylight had been installed above what would soon be a glass-walled yoga studio. Rowan had thrown himself into the work completely, but it wasn't the project alone that consumed him. Zara had become a constant presence. She still arrived unannounced, sometimes in boots and a ponytail, other times straight from some distant meeting in a blazer with rain on her shoulders, and every time she did, Rowan felt like something in the air shifted. One afternoon, after the crew had packed up and the sun was slipping low behind the hills, Zara lingered by the garden wall, running her fingers along the stonework Rowan had restored. He approached, wiping dust from his forearm. You've been quiet today. I had a call with an investor this morning, she said, still facing the wall. He wanted to buy a controlling share in the property, said I should back out now while the market's in our favor. Rowan leaned against the wall beside her. You thinking about taking it? Zara glanced sideways. I didn't start this to flip it. I started it because I wanted to create something that lasts. But people like him don't understand that. He looked over the grounds, at the scaffolding still clinging to the east wing, the gravel paths half laid. Then don't sell. If I don't, I'll need someone to run operations once it opens. Someone I trust. His expression didn't change, but his pulse kicked up. You offering me another job? I'm asking if you'd consider building more than just walls here. Rowan didn't answer right away. Zeke had just started kindergarten, and they'd finally found some rhythm morning drop-offs, bedtime stories, cereal at the kitchen table while the sun broke through the blinds. He had roots in the city, even if they weren't deep. But this place had started to feel like more than just a job site. "I'd have to bring my son," he said. "I wouldn't have asked if you couldn't," he studied her. "Why me?" Zara turned fully to face him. "Because you see things the way I do. You care about people, not just plans, and I trust you." Rowan nodded once slowly. "I'll think about it," she exhaled, something soft in her eyes. "Fair enough." Before he could say more, the sound of small footsteps echoed from the gravel path. Zeke and Zaria came bounding around the corner, Zaria waving a crumpled paper in the air. "We made invitations," she shouted. Zeke jumped up beside her. "For our sleepover party, in the sunroom, with popcorn?" Rowan raised an eyebrow. "What sleepover?" Zara crouched beside the kids. "I told them they could have a movie night at the property before the flooring goes in. Thought it might be fun. We'll hang some blankets, bring in snacks, no screens bigger than a projector." Rowan crossed his arms. "You're really planning a party in a construction zone," Zara stood. "I'm planning a memory, there's a difference." That Friday the sunroom was transformed. The walls were still bare studs, but string lights were draped from beam to beam, and a soft rug had been laid over the subfloor. A white sheet hung as a makeshift screen, and a portable projector hummed in the corner. There were beanbags, a cooler full of juice boxes and sparkling water, and a giant bowl of popcorn that Zeke dove into with both hands. Rowan hadn't expected to stay. He figured he'd drop Zeke off, then wait outside in the truck, but Zara handed him a folded blanket and a bottle of ginger beer. "You're not leaving," she said, not as a request. He sat beside her, the blanket tucked beneath his knees as the opening credits rolled. Zaria leaned against Zara's side, and Zeke curled up with one of the stuffed animals he never admitted he still loved. Halfway through the film, the kids began to drift off. Rowan glanced at Zara, her profile lit by the flicker of the screen. Her eyes weren't on the movie, they were on him. He shifted, lowering his voice. "This isn't what I expected when I agreed to babysit for 3 hours." Zara smiled faintly. "It wasn't what I expected either." His voice dropped further. "So why keep showing up?" "Because you're not like anyone I've ever met." He held her gaze. "You mean I don't own a yacht? You don't hide behind one either." There was a pause. Then she said, "My ex used to say that love was a luxury people like us couldn't afford, that it got in the way of ambition." Rowan's hand curled around the neck of the bottle. "He sounds like an idiot." He was charming. Until he wasn't, Rowan didn't press. The silence between them wasn't uncomfortable, it was something else, something charged and unspoken. Zara reached for a throw pillow and tucked it behind her back. "You ever think about dating again?" He hesitated. "I've thought about it. But I don't have time for games, and I've got a kid." "That changes everything." "I know," she said. "That's one of the reasons I'm here." Rowan turned to her fully, his voice low and even. "Zara, if this is just a phase, a distraction from your world, I need to know now." "Because I don't let people into Zeke's life unless I'm sure." Her eyes didn't waver. "I'm not playing. I don't bring people into Zaria's life unless I'm sure either." The air between them felt like it could snap. Then, as if the universe had waited for the perfect moment, the projector flickered off. The screen went black. Zeke snored softly in the corner, and Zaria had curled into her mother's lap. Rowan stood, offering a hand to Zara. She took it, and he helped her up, her fingers lingering in his longer than necessary. They carried the sleeping kids to the back seat of Zara's SUV, tucked them in with jackets and pillows, then stood in the driveway beneath the moonlight. "I should go," he said, voice rough. She nodded. "Yeah, but neither moved." Rowan stepped closer. "This thing between us, it's real, isn't it?" Zara's breath caught. "It is." He leaned in, almost touching, his hand brushing her cheek. "Then don't run from it." "I'm not the one who runs." Their lips met, not tentative or unsure, but like two people who had waited long enough. It was the kind of kiss that rewrote everything. When they pulled apart, Zara whispered, "I don't want to pretend this is casual." "Neither do I." The car beeped softly behind them as Zeke stirred. Rowan stepped back. "I'll follow you home. Make sure you get there safe." Zara smiled, her eyes shining in the dark. "You already do." As they drove down the winding road, headlights carving through the trees, a truth settled between them, quiet, solid, and undeniable. This wasn't just something beginning. It was something they both needed to protect. The estate's grand opening was 2 weeks away, and every second of Rowan's day felt like a countdown. The final landscaping was underway, the spa tubs had been craned in that morning, and the final inspection was scheduled for the following Monday. Rowan stood in the nearly finished reception hall, the sun pouring through the massive glass doors as he reviewed the final punch list. His hands were covered in graphite from marking corrections on the blueprint when Zara walked in, hair loose, a navy wrap coat fluttering behind her. "You missed breakfast," she said, setting a paper bag and coffee on the edge of the blueprint table. He looked up. "I figured you'd be neck-deep in meetings." I still am." She opened the bag and pulled out a breakfast sandwich. "But I figured you needed this more than I needed another hour of someone pitching me scented candles for the gift shop." He leaned back on his heels. "You brought me food to stop me from passing out. I brought you food because I like you in one piece." He took the sandwich, but didn't bite. "You good?" Zara hesitated. "My aunt flew in last night. She wants to see the place." Rowan set down the sandwich. "You nervous? She's the last real family I've got. She raised me after my mother died. She's opinionated about the business, about everything. She thinks I'm reckless for putting this much money into something that doesn't guarantee a return." Rowan picked up his pencil again, tapping it against the table. "What does she care about returns for? It's your money. She says it used to be my mother's. That I should protect it, not spend it." He met her eyes. "Is that what you're doing? Spending it?" Zara didn't answer right away. "I'm building something I believe in. Then she'll see that. She might not, and she won't sugarcoat it." Rowan reached for the sandwich again. "Then she'll have to deal with the fact that her niece is her own woman now." Zara gave him a look he hadn't seen before, somewhere between gratitude and fear. "You'll be here when she comes," he nodded. "You'll need backup." The meeting happened later that afternoon. Her aunt arrived in a slate-colored town car with tinted windows, dressed in a tailored coat and a pair of pearl earrings that glinted in the sunlight. She stepped onto the gravel like she owned the land beneath her heels. Rowan stood with Zara near the entryway, wiping dust from his forearms as the woman approached. "Rowan, this is my aunt, Eleanor." Eleanor studied him for a long moment before offering her gloved hand. "So you're the one she hired to rebuild this place?" "Yes, ma'am." "You don't sound like someone who's used to being called ma'am." "I'm not," he said evenly, "but I respect people who deserve it." Eleanor arched a brow, then turned to Zara. "Let's see what you've done." The tour took nearly an hour. Eleanor was thorough, asking about margins, materials, long-term maintenance costs. She walked the grounds with the eye of someone who had run boardrooms, not gardens. But when they returned to the entrance hall, she paused in the center of the open space, looking up at the arching wooden beams Rowan had salvaged and restored. "My sister would have loved this," she said quietly. Zara's breath caught. "You think so?" She had vision. "You got that from her." Zara's shoulders dropped slightly. "I wanted to make something that mattered." "You did." Eleanor looked over at Rowan. "And you picked the right partner to do it with." After she left, Zara stood at the edge of the koi pond Rowan had helped install last week, arms wrapped around herself. She's never said anything like that before. Rowan joined her, watching the fish dart beneath the surface. "Maybe she needed to see it to believe it. She's proud of me. You deserve that." She turned toward him. "You believed in this before anyone else did." He shook his head. "You were the vision. I just helped bring it to life." There was a pause, then she said softly, "I want you to stay." He looked at her. "I was planning to. No, I mean, after, not just for the job. I want us to figure out what this looks like. You, me, the kids, all of it." Rowan didn't answer right away. He looked out across the lawn, where Zeke and Zaria were building something out of sticks and stones, completely in their own world. "I never thought I'd get this," he said. "Not after how things went with Zeke's mom. I figured it'd just be me and him, figuring it out day by day." Zara stepped closer. "And now," he turned to her, "now I think maybe we're not supposed to do it alone." She reached for his hand. "Then let's not." The grand opening arrived with more fanfare than Rowan had expected. Photographers, local press, a ribbon-cutting ceremony with a champagne toast. Zara stood at the center of it all, elegant and composed, delivering a speech that made Rowan's chest tighten. He stood in the back with Zeke on his shoulders, watching her talk about healing and legacy, about the importance of creating beauty in the spaces we live in. After the applause faded and the crowd began to mingle, Zara found him beside the stone archway leading to the garden. "Did I sound ridiculous?" she asked. "You sounded like someone who knows what she's doing." She stepped closer. "I've never been more sure of anything." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Zara blinked. "What is that?" He opened it. Inside was a slim gold ring, simple, elegant, nothing flashy. "I've never had a lot to offer, but I want to build a life with you, not just a house or a job or a few months of something good, a real life." Zara stared at him, eyes widening. Rowan's voice was steady. "Marry me." She didn't hesitate. "Yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and she leaned into him, resting her forehead against his. "Does this mean I get to boss you around forever?" she whispered. "Only if I get to fix every door that squeaks in our house." She laughed, the sound full and unguarded. A few feet away, Zeke and Zara were dancing barefoot in the grass, hands clasped, spinning in circles. Rowan wrapped his arms around Zara as the sun slid low behind the hills. The house was finished. The kids were laughing. The future was open, and they had built it all together. The wedding didn't happen in a ballroom or a cathedral. Zara didn't want chandeliers or a string quartet, and Rowan had never imagined tuxedos or a crowd of strangers. What they had built together wasn't built on show, it was built on grit, trust, and late nights with paper plans spread across dusty tabletops. So they got married where it all began. Right on the estate's front lawn, under the archway Rowan had rebuilt with his own hands. The early autumn breeze rustled the golden leaves overhead, and Zeke and Zara stood proudly between the rows of white chairs, handing out programs they'd helped design with crayons and glitter glue. Rowan wore a navy suit that Zara had chosen for him on a quiet afternoon at a boutique she owned, but never mentioned. The fabric still smelled faintly of cedarwood and clean linen. Zara wore ivory, not a dress, but a tailored jumpsuit with a silk sash that fluttered behind her like a ribbon in the wind. They stood hand in hand as the efficient and old friend of Aliner's, a retired playwright with a gentle voice, read their vows from a weathered leather journal. When it was Rowan's turn, he didn't reach for a paper. He looked her in the eyes and spoke the truth. "You built a world I didn't know I needed, and you let me build it with you. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure it stands strong." Zara's voice was steady, but her eyes shimmered. "You gave me something no one else could, a love that doesn't ask me to be less. I promise I'll never ask you to be less either." As they kissed, Zara let out a loud cheer, and Zeke dropped a handful of flower petals over their heads, missing completely but laughing anyway. The reception was held under a canvas tent strung with warm lights. Tables were set with hand-stitched linen runners and mismatched ceramic dishes from local artists. Zara had insisted on the food being cooked by the estate's new in-house chef, a woman Rowan had hired himself who had prepared dishes from both their childhoods. There were lemon rosemary chicken thighs, skillet cornbread, and a chocolate sheet cake with real buttercream that Zeke had helped decorate the night before. Aliner clinked her glass halfway through dinner and stood, her posture regal as ever, but her voice softer than Rowan had ever heard. "I used to think Zara's ambition would burn too bright to ever share space with anyone else," she said. "But then she met a man who didn't try to dim it. He built her a place to shine, and in doing so, he found his own light, too." Zara reached for Rowan's hand under the table and squeezed it. Later that night, when the last song played and the kids had fallen asleep on a pile of throw pillows under the tent, Rowan carried Zeke to the SUV while Zara tucked Zara into the backseat. The ride home was quiet, filled with the quiet hum of night and the shared weight of everything they'd become. They didn't go on a honeymoon, not right away. There were bookings to manage, a staff to train, and a waiting list for the retreat center that stretched into next spring. But they didn't need a week on a beach to feel like something had changed. Every morning they woke up beside each other, every time they passed in the hallway and shared a look that said, "We're really doing this." It felt like its own kind of paradise. 6 months later, the retreat was running at full capacity. Guests came from across the country. Artists, entrepreneurs, survivors of burnout and heartbreak, they came seeking rest and left with something more. Rowan led morning meditation walks across the hilltop trails he'd helped carve, and Zara taught creative strategy workshops in the sunroom where the kids had once watched movies on a makeshift projector screen. Zeke had made 3 new best friends and started building tree forts in the back field. Zara had recently decided she would be an architect when she grew up, and spent most afternoons sketching new wing additions no one had asked for, but everyone admired. One night, after the final guest had been checked in and the kitchen had gone quiet, Zara and Rowan stood on the back veranda, wrapped in a shared blanket, mugs of herbal tea warming their hands. "You remember the day I asked you to watch Zara," she said, her voice low. "I remember thinking you'd lost your mind. You didn't even hesitate, you just said yes." He looked at her, his face lit by the soft glow of the patio lanterns. "I didn't know then that saying yes to that would mean saying yes to everything else." She rested her head on his shoulder. "You gave me something I didn't even know I needed." He kissed the top of her head. "You gave me a life I didn't think I deserved." They stood in silence for a while, listening to the soft rustle of the trees, the distant giggle of Zeke and Zara whispering in their shared loft bedroom window above. Zara turned toward him. "We're good, aren't we? We're better than good," he said. "We're home." She slid her arms around his waist, holding him close. "Then let's never leave." They didn't. The estate became more than just a destination. It was a legacy, a sanctuary. A testament to what could be built when 2 people let go of what they thought they were supposed to want and chose what they truly needed: each other. Years later, guests would walk the grounds and wonder aloud who had created such a place, one that felt like peace and possibility wrapped together. And someone would always say the same thing: it was built by 2 people who fell in love with more than just a dream. They fell in love with each other, and it changed everything, forever.